Well, this is actually an interesting kind of like combined conversation. We're talking about 1A and 2A, and I got this tweet from Vaush. Okay, so Vaush is he's a socialist. He's a leftist. We've had him on the show. He responded to this story about Jen Psaki saying this seems pretty effed. He said companies have a right to create and enforce TOS, and the government has a right to legislate. But the idea of the government informally pressuring tech companies into changing their TOS without legislation seems pretty scary. I'm not sure what the solution to the mass spreading of disinformation is, but some solutions certainly seem more 1984 than others. And then he made a joke. All my political opinions are formed by feeding tweets into an algorithm which rates them on a scale of 1776 to 1984. Until I have a stronger opinion on this, my official position is that we can fix social media disinformation by simply banning everyone I don't like. Perfect. Now, what's funny is he has a follow-up tweet completely unrelated of his Smith & Wesson 22 Victory, which he says came back after sending it off for repairs, looking very handsome in its new grip, in my honest opinion. And I'm just like, all right, if we can agree that that was bad and we can agree that the guns are good, all right, we agree. We agree.
Yeah.
I ultimately wonder when we talk about the potential for civil war, collapse, or balkanization, if there really will be a major conflict, if the major conflict will be the left populist versus the right populist, because I kind of don't think it will be. I think it'll be more establishment, machine, industrialist.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, me and Forrest in the kitchen downstairs, and I think it's going to be economic rather than military. I mean, there might be a military behind the economic, but I think it'll be like a shattering into state currency or something, and then Florida will be like, we're not accepting Arkansas coin if you act like this, and the Fed's like, coin. You have to accept Arkansas coin, and they're like, no.
No, but I think the populists might end up avoiding each other to a certain degree. The problem, though, is a lot of the people on the left who are actually particularly authoritarian, but I don't think that they're populist. I think there are left populists. There are many of them. Unfortunately, they give too much power to the Democratic establishment. But I think if things actually reach, if it hits the fan, I think most people who are populist or libertarian leaning are going to be like, I'm going to sit at my house and grow vegetables. Leave me the F alone. It's the authoritarians who are going to be cracking down and trying to go after people.
Can you real quick define populism?
It's when you are supported by and working for the interests of the population, of the people, popular support. Then you have elitism, which is when you're working for and supported by the powers of the elites. And then you have the establishment, which is mostly the elite infrastructure, the machines, the old money, the traditional power structures. So Trump is a populist. He has almost no support from the elites. Tucker Carlson is an elite, gives him some support, so there's some people there for sure. But he has almost no elite support, but he has tons of popular support. The elites can muster up a strong force against that and restrict access to institutions. So all the institutions are all, for the most part, elitist. Yeah, so the left populists, they were the Bernie Sanders crowd, but then Bernie went totally establishment. Then they started voting in people like Biden because I don't think they understood what they were doing. And interestingly, the right populist movement is actually not even completely economically or culturally right-wing, but it's just older left-wing people like I used to be, or you probably were at some point, or still are.
I definitely was, yeah.
More leftist, and now it's kind of like, hey, freedom is important and what the establishment is doing is wrong. Then you have these younger left populists who just, the establishment is better because Trump is a fascist and I don't know better.
Authoritarian populist? Where they're like, we're going to legislate for everyone to make it better for everyone. And then they end up ruining it for a bunch of people on accident.
I think this is a really good place to put a line of demarcation or a differentiation between two concepts. Because when you're talking about populism, we describe somebody as a populist. I don't prescribe them as a populist. I describe Donald Trump as a populist because he gets his support from the people. A person doesn't become a populist in the sense of it's a thing that they become. It's a method of description.
Right.
And so, whereas in the same thing in that elitist thing is like, well, you could also say that some people are just, they prefer to work for the good of the elites. So I think populism growing is different than democracy in the sense it's not a system of governance. But the issue with populism versus authoritarianism, where we're starting to see this kind of tear itself apart, is the authoritarianism is a top-down approach, whereas the populism is a bottom-up approach from of cultural norms.
Yes.
Right. So Jen Psaki overtly states we are an authoritarian. We have an authoritarian view on cultural norms. We have the right as the elites to dictate to you what is okay and not okay. Whereas Donald Trump, in that if he's being described as a populist, is in more of a symbiotic relationship of saying, you have the values are coming from the people, and they put their position into Donald Trump.
I will say, when it comes to this tweet from Vaush about the Smith & Wesson 22 victory, is my biggest criticism is that he chose the victory, because I have one and it fails to eject the case. Like, it just keeps jamming. And so I went online and they were like, you got to like file down the what is it called, the ejector pin or whatever.
Yeah, it might be the ejector.
Yeah, and so I'm like, you shoot a couple times, it gets jammed. Vaush, man, there's better 22s. I'm just kidding. It's actually a great gun. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and also 22, especially 22 handguns, are notorious for being picky with ammunition.
Right. I was kidding, Vaush. Your gun looks pretty cool.
But we do need more Tim and Vaush drama.
Yeah, we do.
Well, we're
Come on, Vaush.
the plan right now is Charlie
Love you,
Kirk
bro.
and
That's
Vaush
right.
on August 3rd.
I'm
Cool guy.
stoked.
Thing I like about Vaush, and his name's Ian. I want to call Ian. What's up, dude? Is he's like really smart. Like, it's whatever your political beliefs are, and this is kind of what I always want to remind myself and other people about. Is it doesn't really matter what your political beliefs are. If you're really smart and open-minded, and you like listening to people, go for it. You have your discussion and your ideas.
You don't gotta like the guy. You got to beat him in a debate.
Of course.
So for anybody who's saying they think he's dumb or they don't like him, it's like, yeah, well,
He's definitely not
Then
dumb.
if you know it, and you can beat him in debate, there you go. That's what it's all about. Anybody who's willing to come in here and sit down and have that debate, that's great. I respect that, because there's a lot of people who are grifting, who outright refuse to come in. There are even people who are not even like, there are people who are moderately right who are scared of talking about certain things. So somebody wants to come and sit in the lion's den and have that. I mean, he's agreed to sit here with Charlie and me. Me and Charlie don't agree on everything, but we definitely don't agree with Vaush. So he's like willing to sit down on what's effectively a 2-against-1 debate. All right, that's
he's
great.
good about debating. I like that about him.
Yeah,
Bring it on.
I think we're seeing a shift in the way that we talk about things, like especially like intelligence, is that there's a difference between being intelligent and being an honest intellectual. So somebody, like, again, you could take somebody who has the hardware or the practice, and they understand something very thoroughly, and they're very, very well versed in a subject. But when they come to a conversation, they're not interested in understanding the subject or coming to solutions on problems. They're interested in something else. And I think that's actually a very large undergirding issue with the way that we address things in society.
I'm not super worried about leftist YouTubers, to be completely honest. When we're talking about what's going on with Jen Psaki and the federal government, I understand that when it came to the 2020 election, they played a huge role in helping the fascistic establishment machine take power. And that sucks. But that's happened. We have the audits happening. We'll see if what more comes from that. We'll see where we end up. But regardless of any of it, it seems like we're heading towards some kind of breakup. Peaceful divorce.
Yeah, decentralization at the very least.
The federal government's become too powerful, and now it's starting to lose a lot of that power. Like, one of the things we mentioned the other day, and we mentioned quite often, the Democrats use the federal government to enact local laws for everybody in areas that aren't local to them. And I think a lot of people do this too. It's funny when you see someone running for Congress and they'll be like, if you vote for me, I'll make this place better. It's like, I'm from St. Paul, Minneapolis, and I want to make St. Paul clean, so vote for me. And it's like, bro, you represent us to the feds. Mm-hmm. You go to DC. You're not here to discuss budget for the local cleaning up of these streets. So what happens is they go to DC and they say, our streets are dirty. I demand we create a massive federal budget to clean up streets. And then you got some guy who lives in the mountains of like Wyoming and over in the Rockies, and he's like, what? Why are my tax dollars going towards it? That makes literally no sense. But guns are a better example.
Perfect example.
Somebody in New York being like, these guns are a problem. We should ban them. And then there's a guy fighting a grizzly bear, and he hears, like, on his radio, they want to ban guns. And he's like, I'm in the middle of fighting a grizzly bear. Mm-hmm. I need my gun to fight that grizzly bear, There's water collection's another interesting one, because in some states, and I don't have a list of which ones, but it's illegal to collect rainwater. I think because it grows bacteria, like standing water and mosquitoes, so you don't want it in a city. But in some areas of rural America, you need access to rainwater. It's because of groundwater. So typically the places that ban water collection is because it would eventually deplete groundwater reserves. So the water has to cycle into the soil and everything like that.
That's that way in Colorado.
It's not about one person having water. It's about if everyone was doing it. But then there's some places that don't do it. Imagine if some guy, imagine if Arizona went to the federal government and said, we want to pass a bill that says the Great Lakes should share their water with everybody. Well, not everybody needs the Great Lakes water, and the Great Lakes needs it more than you do, but they need water. So they want to pass laws that affect everybody. So now that we're past 2020, I what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go to a lot of these like left YouTuber types who are like, please vote for Joe Biden, and be like, here's a big list of everything you screwed up? I think a lot of people realize how bad things are, how they got duped. The promises that were made by the Democrats didn't come true. And now you have all of these, Biden voters posting their L's on Twitter. And now I'm just like, okay, I'm honestly not worried about the useful idiots.
I got burned by George Bush when he told us they're weapons of mass destruction. I think everyone needs to get burned once by a politician, by a president, and to realize that system is susceptible to corruption.
It's tough, dude. Because you know what it is? It's that we trust. And so when you're young and you're in your 20s, and then Obama comes around and he's like, I'm going to bring change and hope. Get our troops out of the Middle East. It's going to be great. And then you're like, this is fantastic. End the war on drugs. And you're like, wow, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. I grew up with these bad guys. Here's a good guy. And then you get burned. And you're like, wow, he was a bad guy. Screw everybody. Yep. Young people, they give the benefit of the doubt. They don't do it again. Sometimes people do. But I think most of the establishment people on social media, man, they are absolutely just looking for some kind of personal gain from the win.
What do you mean establishment people?
Like the media people, the overstate, the cathedral. They're absolutely going to lie, cheat, and steal because they're going to be empowered.
You said it a couple times earlier this week, and I think you made the point very clear. When Joe Biden is talking, he's not talking to you. That's what he's meaning. He's talking to his elites. He's like, yeah, we're doing these things for our own good. Your opinion on the matter is irrelevant. You as a person, Ian, or my when you present the world in that kind of way, he's not interested in what you think. And so when you even look at balkanization and decentralization, they're the same thing. But one of them, balkanization, is more of a breaking of political structures, as opposed to decentralization starts in the home.
How so?
So you have your experience where you get burned by a politician. You might become cynical, if nothing else, or at least suspicious of all of your political of anything political. But that itself is not self-sufficiency. That itself is just skepticism, and skepticism manifests into nihilism, and then you just go crazy. So we don't want that. So what you get, this balkanization, this structure that we're talking about, is when I'm voting for somebody for the House of Representatives, I know that they're going to the House of Representatives of the feds, so I'm interested in their representation of my state to the federal government. I'm not interested in their representation to my state, to its own people, because I am sending them as a representative to the federal government. And so I focus a lot more on local politics, right? If I live in Brooklyn Center, I am interested in who is the city council of Brooklyn Center. If you look at a lot of the strife that's gone through Minneapolis in the last year, it's all on the local level. And then people on the federal level, like Maxine Waters, come in and cause more. Mm-hmm. But they don't create it themselves. They add on to the chaos of the city. So when you look at like decentralization, you could say, why is it that, or here's two really good examples referring to guns. Joe Biden's, not Joe Biden himself, but like the ATF currently put out new letters theoretically redefining what a brace is, making these guns SBRs, and it's a whole big legal problem. It effectively will make anywhere between 10 and 30 million people felons overnight. So yeah, if you with confiscation is all kind of trouble, right? So you have that issue, and then Texas goes, we as a state will not allow the federal government to enforce this law. They are decentralizing their understanding of firearms rights from the federal government. They're not getting it from the top down. California did the same thing. You're not allowed to own these guns in our city or in our state. Two very good examples of the opposite ends of the scale of both people being decentralized. The states ultimately compromise the United States. So
what did you say? SB something?
SB Tactical?
No, you said they were trying to make stocks illegal to make it an
SBR, short-barreled rifle. I apologize for that.
SBR. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to look into like the history of terrible laws, look at the NFA.
Oh yeah,
the National Firearms Act. Because if your barrel is too short, now you're a bad person.
Yep.
Why is that? Because it's easier to conceal?
There's a functionally in our current life that where we live now, it is completely arbitrary, and it's because of the bureaucratic bloat. Laws never go away; they always get added to. And
there's a forward grip. I don't know what it's called, but it's like slight angle. And I was told that if you hold it improperly, it turns your pistol into a rifle.
Oh.
If you put the ATF has determined that if you put a foregrip, a vertical foregrip on the front of your on a large frame pistol that has a brace, it is considered turning it into an SBR.
But there's a one grip that's actually like it's like a wedge, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the Magpul angled foregrip.
I was told that if you hold it the way it's supposed to be holded, you're fine. But then if you hold it like, you're supposed to have your hand in front of it or behind it. And if you put your hand on it, it makes it a foregrip, and now it's...
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that one, because that is another really, really good point on why this whole NFA, National Firearms Act, is so problematic, is because, one, it was a gun confiscation scheme that started a long time ago that failed. It basically failed in the Senate, or in the legislation. And then... So it was just, again, we want to take all the guns away. Okay, no, it's compromise. Okay, we'll only make these illegal. That's one problem. And then after that, well, firearms technology has changed massively since that.
3D printing.
It can't keep up with it. The legislation cannot keep up with it, and the change in how firearms are used, and how people are shooting different types of competitions. They're looking for different types of firearms for home defense. They're not just, it's not all your granddad's bolt action anymore.
Are they gonna make rail guns?
They have them. They already exist. They're just not very.
I mean, like NFA items. Are they going to make rail guns banned? Are they going
to? Let's not give the enemy any ideas.
No ideas.
Well, thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.